Worked hard to try and get Libya back into Washington's good books. Rosalind Jordan explains.
Embassy Row in Washington, the workplace of hundreds of foreign diplomats. But they're not the only ones who represent countries. There are also lobbyists, such as Rhonda Fahmy Udon. She used to represent Libya.
From Libya's perspective, they wanted to be removed from the terrorism list.
Libya was removed from the list in 2006, which meant Tripoli could now access U.S. technology and military equipment. Then there are those lobbyists who are unofficial, often former senior administration officials, such as Richard Pearl, who press reports say met with Gaddafi twice and then briefed then Vice President Dick Cheney about the meetings. Libya has spent several $1 million on lobbying contracts since 2004, but Tripoli's investment did not fully pay off, in essence because it undercut its own image of a Western-friendly regime. The hero's welcome given to Lockerbie bomber Abdelbaset al-Megrahi outraged many Americans and caused one Washington lobbying firm to cancel its contract in protest. And after Saif al-Islam Gaddafi condemned the protesters, an American professor quit the board of the human rights group that Saif runs. Rhonda Fahmy Udon ended her firm's deal with Libya in 2007. What does she think of the violence now taking place in the country she once represented?
It is a disgrace, and it is absolutely more than unacceptable. It's horrible what's going on over there now. But I must say that the United States certainly had its dealings with Colonel Gaddafi over the years. And as I said, it was the U.S. government that made the decision, and the strategic decision at the time, to not push for regime change. And I suppose we could have, but I think that the deal with giving up his WMDs probably wouldn't have gone through. And so you would have had a situation right now where he's not only killing and murdering his own people, he would have had WMDs in his hands right now.
A chilling prospect at a time when the international community is trying to respond to a situation spiraling out of control. Rosalind Jordan, AlJazeera, Washington.
Well, the Philippines is marking 25 years since its own people power revolution forced Ferdinand Marcos from power. It's being seen as both a hopeful and cautionary example for democratic movements spreading in the Middle East and North Africa.
For many Filipinos, it was their country's proudest moment. The 20-year Marcos dictatorship overthrown, the peaceful uprising was known as people power. The world watched as a widowed housewife named Cory Aquino assumed the presidency. As the Marcos family went into exile, there were high hopes that the Philippines would finally regain a place among the frontrunners in Asia.
25 years on, and people power has taken on a bittersweet flavor for many Filipinos who feel not much has changed since they first reclaimed democracy.
8 months ago, Cory Aquino's only son was sworn in as the Philippines' 15th president, with one of the largest mandates in the nation's history. His mother had just passed away, and he inherited the mantle of ushering in change. Filipinos had once again grown tired of a continuing stream of corrupt officials.
The change of management was there, but the political culture lived on. So you have to get rid of that political culture if you're going to have really a meaningful democracy.
The Marcoses are all back from exile too. His widow is in Congress and his only son in the Senate, seemingly poised to be in the running for the next presidential elections.
I think there are fewer and fewer big misconceptions about the Marcos legacy. I think that the propaganda that was so rife in 1986 has been proven to be propaganda and nothing else.
For many Filipinos, people power is now little more than an empty symbol.
That's what these people in Tunisia and Egypt have to watch out for. The same thing that happened to us. If they don't write it into their textbooks and educate the next generation of children that what happened was a bleak and black period in their history, then they're going to see Mubarak's descendants and Ben Ali's descendants come back in 10 or 20 years.
It was the first of its kind and served as an example. And 25 years on, as Filipinos remember, they also hope that the world heeds the lessons of its failures.
Well, for more on this, let's cross over to Margo Ortegas in Manila. Margo, looks like the party's picking up a little bit behind you. What's going on now?
Yes, indeed. The people here are getting ready to reenact what's called the Salubungan. If you can just see here behind me, there are students, members of civil society, getting ready to reenact the actual moment when the protesters at that time in 1986 met with the military on EDSA, which is the main thoroughfare here in the capital city of Manila. Now, right behind us, as you see there behind these people, is the military base where military mutineers actually hold themselves up, and which is what led millions of people to take to the streets of Manila when these mutineers turned their back on then President Ferdinand Marcos. Millions were on the streets then. We don't see nearly as many people now, which is exactly a reflection, really, of the bittersweet flavor that this recollection now has for many Filipinos. A lot of the younger generation really saying that the actual meaning of EDSA 1986 escapes them.
That's an interesting point. I was reading, and it caught my attention, Margot, that the Philippine president is saying 25 years on, the fight against corruption continues. I guess a lot of people feel this People's Power revolution is still a work in progress, despite more than 2 decades passing.
Indeed, and that's what many analysts here in the Philippines are hoping, that the rest of the world that is going through similar movements right now really learns from what happened here. It has been 25 years, almost a change in generation of leaders, and yet we're seeing the descendants of the very people that were removed from power in 1986 back in political positions again. And that's greatly because the political system itself has not changed. The culture has not changed. As was said earlier by Alan Robles in our piece, you know, there was a change of management, but the office itself, or the administration and the way things work in the Philippines, hasn't changed. The political culture has to be completely overhauled so that leaders of the kind of President Marcos do not find their way back into power.
All right, Margot Ortegas updating us from Manila. Well, after 4 days of searching, hopes of finding more survivors of the earthquake in New Zealand are fading. Rescue crews are scouring the rubble, but the threat of aftershocks is hampering the operation. Tanya Page has the latest from Christchurch.
Rescuers are working around the clock. The Canterbury television building now a mangled pile of metal and concrete. There's little hope anyone will be found alive here, but they're still trying. More than half of the dead have been pulled from the rubble of Canterbury television, and an English language school also in the building. Police say up to 120 more bodies may be found. New amateur video filmed by a Japanese tourist shows the exact time the earthquake struck. A moment that has changed Christchurch forever. The death toll is steadily rising and the danger is far from over. The aftershocks come regularly, every one bringing this cliff face closer to further collapse. All the people who live near it were evacuated overnight. Boulders the size of cars have come crashing down. It's been raining here and more bad weather is forecast. The fear is that could loosen the soil, still holding up the remaining cliff.
Yeah, so Marty Murphy's been here 50 years. This is it, I'm afraid, isn't it, Marty?
Rob Dowson is moving his 84-year-old father-in-law out.
I think it's ripping him apart just by shifting out, but also, as I mentioned, this is going to be the story that's going to be repeated